So my name's Helen Mayers, and I have come from Take Two Eton. I work in the corporate travel industry, so I've got over 20 years travel industry experience. I've had a variety of roles from operations, so booking flights, doing online support, working in implementations, and I've worked myself up to be head of data at Take Two Eton. Now I have a strategic approach to data, so I'm not a technical person, so I'm not here today to talk to you about any technical aspects of what we do. It's more how we're taking a sort of real world approach to our data and trying to solve some of the problems that we have with our customers. Bear that in mind, obviously, the non-technical approach, if you've got any questions at the end. So just bear that in mind. I've visited over 40 countries. That's not a showing off piece. It just means that I've travelled. So I understand the joy and the pain of travel. Most of the time, though, being a corporate traveller, I travel from just outside of Leeds down to London, stay at the same hotel, do the same journey. And actually that's quite relevant, I think, for most of us who end up travelling with business. This is my second visit to Big Data London. I came here as an enthusiastic, sort of new to head of data role last year. So let that be a warning to any enthusiastic newbies today that I'm now here speaking to all of you. So the corporate travel industry, just to give you some sort of background of it, it's a huge industry. So in 2020, actually during COVID, it was still worth nearly $700 million globally, and it's expected to sort of hit over $2 billion in 2028. So it's growing hugely. And we book everything, so air, rail, hotel, car. We do your visas for you if you're travelling overseas. We will book your ground transportation, so when you get to the airport and you need to get into town, we'll make sure that we do that for you. We also book events, so very similar to this one, we book events. And actually, Big Data London is a prime example of what corporate travel is. Last year, there were over 15,000 people, 15,000 people here, not 1,500,000. And all the people there were obviously travelling on a corporate travel basis. So this really sort of epitomises what business travel is. So from our perspective, all of us may, some of us may have stayed at hotels, the last night, travelled down by train. Some of us have flown in. I don't think any of us are daft enough to drive here. But we've all travelled from a corporate travel perspective. And what we do as a business, so Take Two Eton has been sort of 50 years in the making. We were a sort of a travel agent in the southeast of England, really embedded in really good customer service. And a couple of years ago, we merged with Take Two. And from that, we brought some new ideas in terms of what we could do with our data and how we could maybe rethink things from our perspective. What we do is a bunch of things that sort of really stand out from the leisure industry. So we get involved in policy management. So that basically just means that if you're traveling a certain distance, they won't let you travel first class on the train or business class on a flight, and there's only certain hotels you can stay in. We do profile management, so that's the individual side of things. So your frequent traveller cards, smoking, non-smoking preference, whether you have a vegan meal on a plane, for example, that all sits in your profile along with your passport details, etc. And we bring that into every booking as well, so that we make sure that you're accruing any points that you might be picking up on your travels. We give you a variety of different booking options, so you can call us, you can go on our app, you can book online, lots of different options in terms of booking according to preference. And when, competitive in terms of pricing, so we'll help negotiate deals on behalf of our customers and actually be on for ourselves, so any smaller customers can use those deals as well. In-trip support, so something happens in the middle of the night, we're at the end of the phone to support you on it. And we also get involved in tracking. That's not as creepy as it sounds. It just means that you're in a high-risk country. If something happens, it means that we can find you and get in touch with you and try and move you on to a safer place if need be. We do consolidated invoicing, so we work with some huge companies that have, got travel budgets of sort of 10 million above. And actually, when you've got so many travellers who are travelling off individually, having that consolidation and that overview of what your spend is really important. And that helps in terms of reconciliation of credit card side of things as well. And then we have an account management team. So for our larger customers, our account managers will sit with our customers and talk about strategy. So how we can help improve safety, help reduce spend on travel, help get better hotels, etc. And we have an account management team that work with customers to do that. In terms of the data side of things, because that's what we're here from, this is kind of what the data journey looks like in travel and has done for the last 20 years. So not terribly exciting. You book your travel, you travel on it, we invoice, there's a reconciliation process, and then we give reports. And that's it. That's kind of how the whole corporate travel industry works at the moment. And on the report and analysis side, the account manager will, like I say, sit down with the customer and go through the data and look at ways to potentially save money. And we had some issues around the reporting, so that's why we came to Big Data London last year, is that our issues around the reporting sort of mentioned at the end. The travel industry tools are sort of kind of, stagnated in terms of what they offer in terms of analytic. They're normally over-engineered, 150 graphs, nobody's got time for that, and they don't really get into the weeds of what's going on from a travel perspective. We have post-trip reporting only, so like I say, you book your travel, etc., and then all the reporting and all the data analysis side of things happens at the end of the trip, and that means we miss the nuances. It means policy decisions are tricky, so everything happens after the event. How does that feed back to you as the traveller when you book? And actually, the biggest problem that we came to Big Data London with last year was that actually we had multiple platforms for different functions. So we had our finance function sat on one platform, and we were struggling with getting support on that. We had the sort of stagnated, over-engineered reporting tools that were the industry standards, and it didn't feel like a good fit. It wasn't really what we were after. So last year we came and we met with Domo, and they we had a great sales process with them. We gave them all of our issues around reporting. They answered all of our questions. We really liked that it was a low-code option. It was really easy to connect our data. And from that, we managed to connect our invoicing data into our reporting and analytics tool. And then that meant that we had control of our data. A lot of the travel industry platforms, you've got to log a ticket, get something updated, and we have no control over our data. And what Domo gave us was a really good control over our data, and we were able to produce our own reporting and analytics tool, which we can adjust according to what our customer requirements are, because not every travel customer has the same question of how they want to save money. And we created this brilliant reporting tool which our customers love, which is really agile. We can do a huge amount with it, and we love it. It's brilliant, and Domo gave us a great solution of that. But actually what this still does is it gives us this sort of A to B journey of data. And what we thought was, after having come in here, is actually, what happens if we take that reporting and analytic data and move it up the chain and try and inform things, further up the chain? Because as well as we do the travel industry, there are problems all along the way. We don't normally tell customers about this, but we'll go through them. And we thought, well, how can we resolve some of these problems? Is there a way that we can do this better with our data? So the first thing that we have is, on the booking side of things, we have slow, clunky tools. Anyone who's used, and I get this as feedback all the time, anyone who's used sort of industry standard booking tools can sometimes find them a bit clunky. I've heard stories of people pressing search, going away, making a cup of tea, coming back and going through the results. And the pricing isn't already always great. People find different prices for different things, or I found it online, etc. It doesn't always deal with your preferences particularly well. So the thing with business travel is, yes, you have to travel, but actually it's still you traveling, and you may have preferences around how you want to travel, and that doesn't always get taken into account. There's no booking history in there quite often, so you don't get to see any of your previous trips. Cost centres, which is all that additional data. Anyone who's booked corporate travel knows you've got to enter your employee number and your cost centre, and people enter all sorts of stuff, and it's really difficult to control, and that means we don't get paid as quickly. The policy's really static. We get cumbersome approvals, so we hide a lot of this in the background with what we do, but a lot of it's quite often manual processes. When you travel, we all know what disruption in travel is like. You know, I had it last year. I travelled down and my train got cancelled halfway down here, so I had to get off and get on another train. I've had flight cancelled. I went to pay for a hotel and the card wasn't there. Travel is disruptive and it's time away from home. Buying travel's not like buying stationery. It's emotive. It's you traveling away from your homes, your family, your dog. It's time away from home. So there's a whole load of emotion around that when you actually travel. Cancellations. Anyone who's been on the rail network will know the cancellations can be rife. Last minute amendments and safety and health impacts. If you take ill when you're overseas or if something happens, like I say, there's safety implications. And you don't really get some joined up options on that, and I'll come into what that looks like in a second. From an invoice perspective, data quality, so the cost centers I mentioned earlier, we have sometimes issues around data quality around that. Credit cards, we can take a while to get the invoices through. It creates issue with cash flow and delayed payments. And then on the reconciliation piece, that then gives us headaches in terms of data provision and then matching the data to credit card statements. Any last minute changes or updates don't necessarily show on credit card statements, and then hotels can take years to send invoices through, and that can be really delayed. And then, as I mentioned before, in the reporting and analytics side, that's one of the issues as well. So actually, we had Domo in place to look at our analytics side of things. And the great thing about Domo is it's not just an analytics tool, it's a full end-to-end data platform. It's a great tool. So we then started having conversations with the guys at Domo and thought, well, actually, can we use this data platform to try and drive some of our solutions? The thing we liked about Domo is you get a really good overview of your data. So this is just an overview of the whole ecosystem. This isn't ours, this is stock images. But you get an overview of where your data is, how it's connected, where it sits, how it links to each other. And if there's, on here you also get if there's any issues with the data as well. So it's a really clear overview of the data. They connect with everything. And if they don't connect with it, they can build it for us. I mentioned before, travel industry data isn't exactly forward thinking, and we've managed to connect all of our travel systems into Domo, from booking tools to profile tools, etc., into Domo. So not only do they have pre-built connectors like some of the ones you see here, but anything that's not currently connected, we can add that in as well. And this, for me, is the star of the show. So this is Magic ETL. So this gives us the opportunity to transform, to merge, to change our data, do what we want to do, using a really good low-code option that's really visible. And again, if there's any issues along this chain, we get really good visibility of it. So from this, we thought, well, actually, we think that Domo can probably answer some of our questions around the issues that we had with data and how we could move data up the chain. So let's go back to a booking perspective, and I will give you some examples of what that looks like and how it works in reality. So preferences and static policy. So I mentioned before about preferences. When you travel on corporate travel, you have to travel. Well, your company, you're traveling there for a business need rather than for leisure travel. But actually, in terms of choice around that, it can be fairly limited. And there's a huge contrast sometimes between policy versus preference. So this is what I actually want to stay in versus what my company will sometimes pay. This is a classic example of what I do versus what my friends think I do. And actually trying to find a middle ground in here can be sometimes quite difficult. So I mentioned before about the reporting being at the end of it. So let's take an example. 8 of you are traveling to a meeting. Everyone else has booked their hotel room. You get to come and book it last, and you have a rate cap of $300. So you book a $300 hotel. You then find out after the event, because that's how the reporting works, that everyone else has booked a $200 hotel room, and you're that person who's booked slightly higher, still within policy, but you stand out as that person. And because the reporting's at the end, you don't get any visibility of this until your travel manager comes to you a couple of months later and goes, hang on a minute, everyone travelled on a $200 rate and you've travelled on a $300. What's the story? And you're cross because you have no visibility of this. What we can do by moving the data back up the loop, is actually present that data to you at time of booking. So we get a meeting ID. So 8 of you traveling to the same meeting, we get a meeting ID, you book under that meeting ID, and we say, by the way, everyone else is traveling for $200. Do you want to be that person? And it gives you choice at the front end. And it means that the travel manager isn't then having to come to you and go, oh, you've spent a little bit extra. But B, you get visibility of what everyone else is doing at the time of booking. And that's what we mean by joined up options. It gives you that chance to make more key decisions at the time of booking. And Domo's helped us do that by actually taking that data and pushing it up to the front end and connecting through our booking tools. So actually, from the stark contrast of these, you find out that there's a middle ground that you can stay that's actually perfectly comfortable and won't break the company bank. There's other stuff that we can do with this as well. So I sort of mentioned stuff about when you're traveling. So when you book and you get to your location, and actually we can then maybe send you a notification to say that, oh, it's raining when you get to your destination tomorrow. Do you want us to book a taxi for you or book public transport? And actually we can use the Magic ETL to do this. So for that, we need to know who you are, where you're traveling to, when you're traveling, and actually what's the weather like at your destination, so we bring in weather data as well. Does your policy allow you to book a taxi? And actually, do you want to book an electric taxi rather than diesel one because you're more ESG minded? What's your policy around that? What's your preference around that? And actually, how are you going to pay us for it? So there's a whole bunch of data that we can bring around for that to make sure that we are delivering in travel services to you, and again by pushing data up by that up that chain. What we've managed to do then is add to this. So we've built a policy engine using Domo, taking these 5 factors, because actually these are the main drivers from both sides. So profile being the sort of preference and your individual, and the company profile. So preference, being the individual, and company profile being what the company's driving. So taking a couple of these, I'm going to run through ESG and disruption. So from a disruption perspective, I mentioned earlier I travel down to York, from York down to London, quite a lot. I connect from a station midway between Leeds and York, and I travel reasonably regularly on it, and often the trains are cancelled. Now, if we brought rail data in that and the cancellation rail data in that, what we could do at time of booking is when I log on to book my travel, it could say this train's cancelled 40% of the time. Do you want to risk it? And that gives me an insight to say, actually, do you know what, I'm going to go to Leeds instead and get the train down from Leeds or Selby or Hull or wherever. So it gives me options and allows me to make a decision at the time of booking. And that means that you're not showing up at the station going, it's cancelled again, and you go through the rigmarole of trying to change your ticket with the agency. So this gives you a decision-making process at the time of booking by bringing in all those different data sources. And this is something that we are then developing from that. So we are getting a first view of this next week. I think we're getting a first view of this. So this is our app, which we are building at the moment. And this is going to bring that policy engine and that preference into a central process, and we can deliver this as a booking app. And this is brilliant, actually. I really like this. So you can see you've got your sort of normal origin and destination. You've got your reason for travel in there, so we can use that for driving policy. So if it's an internal meeting, you may not be able to travel business class, but if you're going to see a customer and you need to be all fresh-faced and pleased to see them, then actually you might get business class. So it can drive policy decisions from the outset. You then obviously get your results back as normal, but then when you go to book, you can see at the end, you've got options. So actually, you are an ESG customer. You have a strong environmental focus when you travel. So we've looked at hotels for you that are strong in terms of ESG delivery and low carbon. You've also got an unused ticket. Again, this is something that would be new. People don't sort of drive unused ticket sales into this. So you've got an option to use your unused ticket on there as well. So it gives you options, and it gives you a sense of control when you're traveling for business. And because we've built this in Domo, we've got the analytics capability. So we can see how well people are using this. We can use in-app analytics, see how long it's taking, see whether there's an issue, see whether people are using it effectively, and seeing if there's any ways that we need to improve the app as we sort of move forward with it. So actually, by moving onto a data platform rather than that sort of bog standard travel industry view, it has given us all sorts of options about what we can do. So we give you suggested trips, you can use your unused tickets, policy engine, we can cope with disruption. We've been able to build a reconciliation tool, so our customers who are on credit card who have trouble reconciling, we used to email them an Excel report, and they'd spend time bringing that in and matching it, etc. And what we can do is provide some automation around that with the data that they're booking their travel through with us, and it will save them a huge amount of time. We've got the ability to put data quality workflows in, so if you don't put a cost center in, we can come back to you. And then the next thing we're looking at is bringing Domo AI into this to help drive some of this. So not just a chatbot. Again, AI tends to be chatbots in the travel industry, but actually what we can do is you normally travel on this cost center, we're going to use it to populate your data, or use it to maybe drive trip choices, etc. And there's a huge amount on our reporting side of things, so ESG provision, etc. And also with Domo, it gives us the ability to push our reporting out through a multiple number of connectors again, so API, SFTP, etc. So really what this has now meant is from that bog standard sort of, travel industry standard of data, what we've been able to do using a modern data stack is actually answer a huge amount of these questions. And the questions keep growing, and what the capabilities of the system keep growing. That's it from me. Thank you very much. Any questions? Oh, I need to put headsets on if there's any questions. There's a gentleman at the back with a microphone if anyone's got any questions. I think there's a lady just down.
Hi, just a few more details on how did you find integrating your booking tools with Domo?
Actually pretty easy, because we use their technical expertise, so where we hadn't connected before necessarily. Some of the APIs were already in place, but they generally connected from booking tool to booking tool or booking tool to invoice tool, not to data platform. So actually the capability of connecting from their side was there, it just hadn't been connected into the data platform. But with the Domo technical team and the consulting services, we were able to get advice on how to connect quite easily. Any other questions?
So looking at it from the security perspective, what kind of data protection measures have you got in place? Because I work as part of the AAG group, and we're looking at Protegrity at this moment in time. So I'm just intrigued to know, with all this sensitive data, how you're handling it.
We have a data security manager, and he oversees all of our data protection side of things. We went through a really rigorous process with Domo to make sure that all the security was in place. In terms of their customer base, they have people like Sony PlayStation that work with them. Some of the US medical centers work with them, etc. So we were really happy with the security details that they have in place. By all means, connect with me if you want any more information on that. It was sort of done by our security manager, but yeah, we do have that in place at our end. Any other questions? Lovely, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.